Hello everybody, I am Jackson Lang and welcome to Fantasy Football Fever. Quickly before we begin, I would like to point out that the point system that I use for this show is full PPR scoring. Okay, let's get to it. Our first segment is Injury Info. Our first player in Injury Info is Deebo Samuel. Deebo suffered an injury to his shoulder in the first half of Sunday's game against the Browns. Deebo got x-rays done that came back negative, but he will have more tests later this week to see the injury severity. Our second player in Injury Info is also a San Francisco 49er, and that is Christian McCaffrey. McCaffrey exited Sunday's game with an oblique injury, and then later returned only to exit the game again after just one play. We've learned about Deebo and McCaffrey's availability for Sunday later in the week, so make sure you keep an eye on both of them. Our third player is Trevor Lawrence. Lawrence strained his knee, and this injury kept him from practicing on Monday. He plays his game on Thursday, so his status is up in the air. Do not be surprised if he does not play, and you should make sure that you have a backup quarterback that you are fine with starting if Lawrence is out, because that is a definite possibility. Our fourth player in Injury Info is Justin Fields. Fields has dislocated his thumb and is doubtful to play in Week 7. We will know more about his long-term status later in the week. The player who looks very likely to fill in for Fields is Tyson Bagent. With that being said, unless you are really desperate for a quarterback, you should not be picking him up. Our fifth player in Injury Info is David Montgomery. Dan Campbell said that Montgomery is expected to miss some time with a rib issue. He will be sidelined for at least a week. This means that Jahmyr Gibbs, if he is healthy, will get his first chance to lead the backfield with Craig Reynolds behind him. If Gibbs is not healthy, it appears that Reynolds will be the lead back for Week 7. Our sixth player is Kyren Williams. Williams sprained his ankle and will be out for at least 1 week. Sources told ESPN's Adam Schefter that despite him being out this week, it is not thought to be a long-term injury. This means that by Week 8, we could see him back on the field. His backup, Ronnie Rivers, is expected to miss some time as well with a PCL sprain. So this could open up the door for the rookie back Zach Evans, who appears to be the Rams' starting running back for Week 7. Our next segment is Start Sit. Our first player in Start Sit is a start, which is Puka Nacua. Nacua is coming off a season low for him, but with the absence of Kyren Williams this week, I think that he'll have a better game. However, I would make sure to keep an eye on his targets and points because they may decline, especially with the way Cooper Kupp is playing right now. Our first sit is Jameson Williams. Williams is coming off a great game, but it was not because of a huge workload. He had 15 to 20 points depending on your league. He had these points because of long balls. In my league, he had 20 points because we give points for a long reception. In some leagues, however, these points are not given to players. Nevertheless, he only had 2 receptions for 53 yards and a touchdown. That is not a game he'll have consistently, and unless he shows fantasy managers that he can be consistent with these big games, he is a sit. Our next start is Zay Flowers. League receiver Zay Flowers just scored his first TD of his career, and he had a great fantasy game. He had 17 points, and throughout the whole season, he's been averaging about 13 points a game. And it looks like the best is yet to come for Flowers. Our next sit is Rashid Shaheed, the wide receiver of the New Orleans Saints. Shaheed is coming off a great week, but I am sitting him because of his inconsistency. In his good weeks, which are weeks 1, 2, and 6, he's averaged 19 points. While in his bad weeks, which are weeks 3, 4, and 5, he's averaged 6 points. He is too unpredictable and needs to show fantasy managers that he can play well consistently if he wants to be a start. Our next start is Adam Thielen. Thielen has the 7th most fantasy points of any player in any position this year. He is averaging 21 points a game. He's been playing phenomenal and has had only 1 bad week in Week 1. He has 59 total targets this year with 49 receptions, 4 touchdowns, and 509 receiving yards. He is a must start. Our next sit is Amari Cooper. Cooper's a sit mostly because of his quarterback situation. He's impossible to predict without Deshaun Watson playing as his quarterback. If Deshaun is playing, I would start him, but if he's not, he is still a sit. Our next segment is Backfield Brawl. The first team for Backfield Brawl is the Cardinals. The Cardinals' backs are all over the place right now, with James Conner being on injured reserve. Kenton Ingram led the backfield with 10 attempts. Then with 8 attempts came Damian Williams, who was just signed off the practice squad. Amari DeMarcado only had 2 carries for 11 yards. Tony Jones, who was signed off New Orleans practice squad, did not play this week, and we will see if he plays next week. For now, I will not be starting any of the Arizona running backs until we see who the true lead back is in this Cardinals offense. Our second team is the Colts. Jonathan Taylor outcarried Zach Moss by 2 carries, but Moss got more rushing yards and a rushing touchdown. Taylor had around 14 points with a big role in the receiving game. He had only a few less yards than Moss rushing, and it appears that Taylor is slowly gaining back his position as the lead back with the Colts. Next week, I would expect more carries from Taylor, but Moss may still have some touches. By the end of next week, I think that the brawl will be over, and then Jonathan Taylor will be the champion. Our next segment is trade advice. First up in trade advice is players to target. Our first player to target is Jacoby Myers. Before this year, Myers was a very unreliable fantasy option. However, this year he is thriving in this Raiders offense. In the 5 games he has played, he missed 1 due to concussion, he has averaged 17 points. Like Adam Thielen, whom we mentioned earlier in the show, Myers has had only 1 bad week. He's a great flex wide receiver 2 option to have, and you should definitely try to target him in a trade. Our next player to target is Joshua Dobbs. Dobbs is averaging 16 points a game and is a great backup quarterback to have. He could possibly be a starter, but only if the rest of your team, even your bench, is very good. Dobbs is not someone that you should be giving up a lot of value for, but if you need a backup QB, make sure you look for him as one of your top options. Our third player in trade advice is Jordan Addison. Addison just played his first game without Justin Jefferson and scored 12 points. This season he is averaging 14 points. He'd be a great player to target in a trade, especially now that he will get more targets with the absence of Justin Jefferson. Hey! Our next segment is keeping up with the Joneses. After they lost to the Raiders this week, the Pats have moved to 1-5, last in the AFC East. The Pats showed signs of life in this game, however. Kendrick Bourne played great and would not be a bad waiver pickup. Ezekiel Elliott had a pretty good game as well. Ramondre Stevenson exited the game and then later returned, but in this time that Stevenson was out, Zeke really shined and got his first touchdown as a Patriot. Ramondre had 1 memorable rough play in the beginning of the game, however. Mack gave him a great dump-off pass, and Ramondre dropped it and almost handed it to the other team. Another concern for the Patriots is their offensive line. They need to fix it and better protect Mack, who got safetied to end the game. The Patriots need to clean up their sloppy play. They showed signs of life in this game, but are still a long way from being a good football team. That is all we have for today. Thank you so much for watching Fantasy Football Fever. I'm your host, Jackson Lang, signing off.